Okay, went here. More great stuff on sex and love. All right. So I said a couple of practical things, and I've said some things about spirit and soul, and about maybe we got it wrong when we think we're just matter and not spirit and all of that stuff. And I can't really go into those arguments, but I think that if you follow what I'm saying about sex and love, you'll find some evidence for understanding that spirit is real. Okay, now, I'm going to make a bald statement, and I'm going to say basically that not only was there a designer of things, which I think is self-evident if you get your biases out of the way, and people who want proof of these things are sort of asking the wrong question in a kind of way. But that's a different philosophical problem. You want to get into that particular problem, read a bunch of books by Owen Barfield, and he'll walk you through the kind of fallen thinking of modern civilization where there's an absence of clarity about a whole bunch of very basic things. But right now, what I want to do here, as part of making some, what would Barfield call them, distinctions that are not differences. In other words, I'm going to talk about love, and I'm going to talk about the cross of love, and I'm going to talk about the four basic forms of love. But it's all love. It's all one thing. Okay? Now, the creation part is that that's what human beings are designed to do, to become capable of loving in all the different ways I'm going to talk about here. And that's why we have the existence we have, and so on and so forth. It's all about us learning to love. And that's one of the reasons why when an aspect of God incarnated as a human being 2,000 years ago, he said, in response to what was the most important commandment, he said to love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your spirit, and to love your neighbor as yourself. What's the greatest commandment? To love. And not only is it a commandment, it's the nature of things. If you think about ordinary human development, the fact that people get together, they make love, they make babies, they raise babies, all the energy in human civilization over the eons that's generative and creative in terms of how the next human being comes to be. If you just step back and survey that, you realize the core of that is love. So now we're going to, and this is a Barfieldian idea, for those of you who want to understand this, and he sort of borrowed it from Coleridge, who was very sharp on these things, but these are distinctions that are not differences. In other words, we're not taking love and dividing it up into pieces and saying it's made of pieces. We're saying that love manifests in a variety of ways, and there's some wisdom that we can take from understanding the way that love manifests. Let me check my time here. 38:44. Okay, so this is the cross of love. Dun, 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 dun. Try to hold this steady. I've got extension palsy. It's not like I vibrate just sitting. Okay, now what does that say there? Well, the cross has and yes, it's intentional that there's a cross, but that involves understanding Christian symbology in a deeper way than most institutional Christian religions don't understand. So let's not get too caught up in that. Well, what's the top and the bottom of the vertical aspect of the cross? Well, what do we mean by top and bottom? Well, one we mean more heavenly and the other more earthly, because a human being is balanced between heaven and earth. Okay? So the top is selfless human love. And the Greeks had a word, agape, and people can argue about what they meant about it. But what I mean about is selfless human love. I don't mean divine love in the sense of the way God loves us, if that's what the Greeks meant by agape, which some people might say human beings are not capable of. And I would say, if we really understand what a human being is a spirit, we would understand that the divine spark is in us. So from that sense, you as a spirit and your lover as another spirit that you love, when you love them selflessly, you're exhibiting the upper aspect of the cross of love. And it goes on all the time, okay? It goes on all the time. And it happens in all kinds of situations, I mean, you got the sacrifices of parents for the raising of their children. This is selfless human love. My father died in his 60s, and he died from stress. And the stress came from his work life that he devoted himself to in order to take care of his family. The stress killed him. And this is common in all kinds of cultures, and certainly in Western cultures. Men go out into life and they try to make the bread that makes the family happen, And it's hard to do, and it's stressful, and it wears them down, and it kills them. Now, women are organized differently, and we'll get into some of that. But here we are, we're just talking about the cross of love. So that's selfless human love. It's everywhere. It's not like you don't get it or can't have it. And people want it. People want to be on the other end of it. People want to be loved that way. So loved so totally and completely by someone who's being so selfless in the way that they love. And when you get on the other side of it, there's nothing quite like it to be loved that way. Now the more earthly, and this is what we were talking about, the redemption of Eros, is Eros. Or, as I show there, that's the Greek name for it, Eros, okay? But I've divided it up on my little diagram, erotic and sensual love. Because, again, it's a distinction without a difference, but it's an important distinction to make, because the erotic is really of the mind or the spirit. Let me give an example of that. Now, I don't mean the crude things that some people do that are movie stars and other things like that. I mean in an intimate relationship where a woman lets her man know that she's not wearing any underwear under her skirt. That idea is erotic. It's not that he sees something, it's not sensual. It's erotic because it's of the mind. That's what makes something erotic. Now, some people who write about sex say that some things are erotic because they are culturally forbidden. And of course, this is one of the big findings of people like Kenzie and stuff like that, was that when they actually asked people what they did all this stuff. They didn't talk about it. It wasn't like you sat down to dinner and people talked about their sex lives and said, "Oh yeah, by the way, I had my wife in the behind yesterday because she likes it and I like it." Okay, I need to pause here and go onward. More to say.